Ouray, near present-day Montrose. In just 5 days, despite strong warnings from Chief Ouray, Packer led 5 other prospectors back into the Colorado winter to seek their fortunes. 66 days later, alone and surprisingly well-fed, Packer emerged from the wilderness and into criminal infamy. While his recollection of events changed often, Packer ultimately confessed and was sentenced to hang. Due to a technicality when Colorado
We're 6 years of doing this job. I hope
We're live guys, so.
Okay. We didn't have a quorum. I'm sorry about that.
No, I didn't know. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I'm going to DC.
The other one is English. Maybe these are all parents from MACKINTOsh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Please come in. We're getting started. I'd like to call to order the Monday, March 12th, 2018 regularly scheduled meeting and study session of the Littleton Planning Commission. Could we please have the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Graham?
Oh, I
Here.
didn't hear it. I'm not used to going first. Here. Sorry.
Commissioner Stallman?
Here.
Commissioner Rudnicki?
Here.
Commissioner Bolt?
Here.
Commissioner Schwartzbacher?
Here.
Tonight we have absent Commissioners Reynolds and Breidenbaugh and Corbett.
Okay. Well, we do have a quorum. Let's see. On tonight's agenda, we have no general business, but we have two public hearings for a, one is, one of the public hearing has been delayed. Tattoo parlor. We do have another public hearing for MACKINTOSH Academy. Then we also, let's see, also have a resolution regarding the Mineral Station Area Framework. Then we'll be adjourning to the conference room for a session on the plan development overlay changes. You have the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none. Next up is minutes to be approved. Y'all had a chance to go over them. Is there a motion?
I move to approve, based on the recording secretary's certification, the February 26, 2018 action minutes for the February 26, 2018 regular meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Vote.
Unanimous and the motion carries.
Thank you. Next item up is public comment. These are for general comments not related to the items on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. We expect everyone to be civil. When you have 30 seconds left, the lady who just disappeared will hold up a yellow card. When your 3 minutes is up, she'll hold up a red card. Do we have a sign-in sheet? Nothing for, okay. We have nobody that signed up for general public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak that hasn't signed up? Seeing none, and nobody signed a list, we'll move on. Next item up is the public hearings. Again, PC Resolution 04-2018, case number CDU-002, conditional use request for a tattoo parlor, 1449 West Littleton Boulevard. The item was not properly noticed, therefore will be rolled over to a future meeting date. Next item up, before we do that, I am recusing myself. I'll be representing MACKINTOSH Academy. Bruce?
Okay. Thank you, Chair Rudnicki. I will now assume control of the meeting. And we still have a quorum, which is a good thing. The couple
Mr.
of pieces
Chair?
of business to start
Mr.
here.
Chair?
Sorry?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to offer that I'm also recusing myself as I have a child that attends MACKINTOSH, so I'm going to be in the audience.
Okay, very good. Anybody else care to recuse?
I do. No, sorry.
Never happened.
All right, well, thanks for everybody else for sticking in. This is PC Resolution number 05-2018, conditional use amendment for MACKINTOSH Academy to add an additional 4,200 square feet of building area located at 7018 South Prince Street, case number CDU 17-0003. I must ask the Planning commissioners at this point, and I'll get on the line, have any of you been to the property, toured the property, and/or discussed this case with anyone associated with the property?
I did look at the property. I did not talk to anyone.
Neither looked at the property nor talked to anyone about it.
Okay.
I did drive by the property. I did not speak to anybody.
Okay. I have driven by the property. I did not speak with anybody, and for full disclosure, our oldest son is an alumnus of MACKINTOSH Academy about 15 years ago, but I don't believe that will impair my ability to render a decision tonight based on the evidence presented. That having been said, I would now invite staff to make their presentation.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Carol Kuhn, representing Community Development. Pam Hall was scheduled to be presenting this, but I'm filling in for her. So to avoid any confusion, I'm not Pam, I'm Carol.
Thank you.
The case before you tonight is MACKINTOSH Academy Conditional Use Permit, case number CDU 17-0003. The applicant is requesting an amendment to one of the conditions of approval required as part of the approval of the 1985 conditional use permit. The site is located, the public notice has been provided for this application. The applicant has posted the property and has sent mail notification to all property owners within 700 feet. The conditional use permits are quasi-judicial matters in which broad policies are being applied to a specific parcel or a specific project area. In your packet is the sketch plan for the CDU. As part of the submittal materials for our conditional use permit is they have to do a sketch plan, so that's in your packet right now. Future application will be for a site development plan, and that's required prior to construction. That is an administrative review process. The existing MACKINTOSH Academy private school is located at 7018 South Prince Street. The original conditional use permit was approved in 1985, and there were 4 conditions of approval set at this time. 1, a maximum of 148 students was set for that conditional use. There was a maximum of 3 structures that were allowed, and the maximum building height of 25 feet 8 inches was set. However, this building height was then reduced to 23 feet 8 inches in 1998. And also, the 4th condition was a maximum building coverage of 14,000 square feet. The applicant is requesting an increase in the maximum building coverage. Since there is a balance, so to speak, of 425 square feet left over from the previous approval, the applicant is therefore requesting an increase of an additional 4,200 square feet. This square footage will be added to the gymnasium, northwest classroom building, and the administration building. Title 10, Section 8(1)A of the city's zoning code under the conditional use section requires that the proposed use at the size and intensity contemplated and at the proposed location will provide a development that is necessary or desirable for and compatible with the neighborhood and/or the community. There is no request to increase the enrollment cap, building height, or maximum number of buildings. It is simply a request to increase the square footage for building coverage. The RE zone district would allow up to 50% lot coverage. MACKINTOSH Academy is proposing a building coverage of just over 10%. The property has more than 75% unobstructed open space, which will be further explored and verified during the site development plan, which is a separate process. The use will not be Title 10, Section 8(1)B of the city's zoning code specifies that the proposed use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or to property improvements or potential development in the vicinity. This determination shall be based on that shall be based on the nature of the proposed site, pedestrian and vehicular traffic, landscaping, screening, unobstructed open space, service areas, lighting, and signage. There is no proposed modification to the site access or vehicular circulation patterns. If the request to amend the conditional use to allow for the additional square footage is approved, the next step would be the submittal of a site development plan. Site development plans, as I mentioned previously, are reviewed administratively. No new signage is proposed, and it appears that this request complies with the criteria. The proposed, Title 10, Section 8.1c of the City's Zoning Code Conditional Use section requires that the proposed use will comply with the applicable provisions of this title and of this code, any design guidelines adopted by the Planning Commission, and will not adversely affect the comprehensive plan. There is no proposed modification, as I mentioned, to the vehicular pattern, and the proposed use complies with the applicable provisions of the title and of the code, and any design guidelines set by the Planning Commission. It's consistent with Policy 1.5 of the citywide plan in that it is a service-oriented business that serves a larger market, as well as the surrounding neighborhood, and it appears to comply with the requirements outlined in this section of the code. In addition, child care centers, private schools, church facilities have special criteria that they need to comply with, and that's in Section 10.8.2b of the code. Child care centers, private schools, and child care centers have to meet the following criteria. The operators of child care centers and private schools shall be licensed in accordance with state requirements. Open play areas shall be screened or otherwise buffered to minimize noise and negative visual impacts on or from adjacent properties. Play areas shall be protected from vehicular traffic by distance separation or by physical barriers. A safe drop-off pickup point for children shall be provided on site. Adjacent public streets shall have adequate capacity to safely carry any additional vehicular traffic which may be generated by the facility. All of these criteria were met with the original conditional use permit. The applicant is proposing only to amend one of the conditions of approval, which is the maximum building coverage. There's no proposed modifications to those criteria stated in 10.8.2b, and therefore the request complies with the code. Staff does find that the proposed amendment to the conditional use permit for MACKINTOSH Academy at 7018 South Prince Street meets the criteria for approval in Section 10.8.1a, b, c, and also 10.8.2b of the Littleton City Code. Therefore, staff recommends approval of PC Resolution 05-2018. And the applicant is here to make a presentation. Mark Radnicki and the head of the MACKINTOSH Academy School are here this evening, as I believe are a whole bunch of other people from the school as well, but I believe those are the two people making the presentation on behalf of the applicant.
Okay. Before we get to that, I'd invite the commissioners to ask staff any questions they may have.
Good.
I have one question.
Please.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
So the first sentence states, the council does hereby declare that certain uses of land may exist only upon the imposition of extraordinary conditions. Could you explain what imposition of extraordinary conditions means?
I'm going to leave that to the city attorney because that's been in the code for a long time, so I'll leave it up to Steve.
In terms of the finding for this particular special use permit, that's essentially going to be a staff judgment. If the staff feels that the requirements are met, they would make the recommendation to you that those items constitute as extraordinary conditions. Now, because you're functioning here in a review capacity, it would be the commission's responsibility at that point to then take that information and give it such credence as you so choose. But you, in essence, would show, as you do in any administrative law function, deference to the staff recommendation, and it would be other facts that would have to be presented that would overcome the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
And for clarification too, all the criteria listed in the code are therefore set up to set the criteria to meet that intent statement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. this may be a better question for the applicant, but you did mention that they're requesting 10% building coverage or 90% unobstructed open space. But there's a letter here dated November 29th that says 50% unobstructed open space. Is that a typo or?
That's the requirement in RE, the RE zone district.
Okay. So that's not what they're proposing for this particular, for the conditional use?
Correct.
So is the 90% in the conditional use?
No, the criteria that were listed, that they just have to meet the zone district requirements, but the criteria set in the original 1985 one were for number of students, the capacity, and the building footprint and building height. There was no specific requirement to meet a certain building coverage as part of that conditional use.
So that's not
That's a
even part of
zoning
it.
district requirement in RE.
Right, but even the 90%, that's just, it's irrelevant really, right?
Right, it's just there as informational purposes. All of that will be further evaluated at the time of the site development plan when they actually put all of these pieces. We're looking at use right now, so we're setting conditions for the requested use.
Okay, and then I'll just ask you this now, since I think it's a typo anyway. There's a letter dated December 26th in the application that says allowable square feet from 12,000 square feet to 18,200. It's really 14, right?
No, the original one is, they're asking for 4,200 more on top of the 14, so it is 18,000.
Yeah, but this is 12,000.
Oh, yes, it is, it should not be 12,000.
14?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking. Okay, all right.
I guess just two quick questions. The increase, given that there's no increase in students, and I have no idea if there's going to be an increase in staff.
2.
Is that what it said? No, I missed that. Thank you. I would assume the answer is no, but you tell me if there's any expectation that given the confined space they're dealing with, from a vehicular traffic standpoint, that there's any staff concerns with circulation and traffic flow in that area.
The city engineer and their staff over in Public Works has evaluated this with the 2 increased staff members and no increase in enrollment. That's typically where the numbers come from. So they're not going to, it's not anticipated that it will be a significant impact because it's only 2 additional staff people. If enrollment numbers were going up, then yes, there could be an impact to the adjacent neighborhood.
Okay. And have there ever been any neighborhood issues or questions or complaints about what they're doing that we're aware of?
That I personally am aware of, no. Okay. But I've only been with the city for a little over 2 years, so.
All right, so we'll ask the applicant.
Yep.
In addition. Okay.
I'm not your best person on that one.
Okay.
Need someone with a little bit longer history.
Fair enough. Any other questions? Seeing none. Something I was going to do at the front end of this, I'm going to step back real quickly. Mainly because there's a lot of folks here who are fresh, new faces, and we don't explain these things. We sort of just a lot of times go through and do it. I want to say this. We're involved in a conditional use request, and I believe one of you used the phrase quasi-judicial decision. A quasi-judicial decision, for those folks in the audience, involves an individual application that's being considered for approval, and the broad policies here are being applied to a specific parcel or project. In a quasi-judicial decision, the decision makers, namely in this case Planning Commission, but it could also be council as need be, must base their decision on the facts presented to them during the public hearing and on information in the official record applicable to code, statutes, and court decisions, just as a judge bases its decision or his or her decision on the evidence presented at a trial. We asked up front whether anybody had had any conversation with anyone about this, and that's to avoid essentially what's called ex parte communication, because we're ethically obligated to make a decision based on evidence presented. So basically just saying that because it's part and parcel of this kind of a decision. Having said that, I would now invite the applicant to come up and make their presentation.
Do we have you on here?
So is that where I go to change?
You can just click the right arrow to turn page.
Okay.
And if you would be so kind as to state your name and your address.
Yes, hello. My name is Diane Dunn. I'm head of school, current head of school at MACKINTOSH Academy. And as it shows on the proposal, we are very pleased because this is the year we're celebrating our 40th year as a school. And we're excited to be here tonight to present our proposal to you. I wanted to give you a little background information about the school that I think is really important to understand. One of the things is that we are a very mission-driven school, and the 3 pillars of our mission are up on there, and then I'll read our mission statement because it is integral to what we do and what we're trying to enhance through this proposed expansion. MACKINTOSH Academy nurtures the keen minds and compassionate hearts of the gifted child in a responsive and caring community of learners. Our students mature into confident, healthy human beings inspired to contribute to a world that needs them. And as it showed on the previous slide, keen minds, compassionate hearts, and global action are the 3 important pillars of our program. So a little bit about who we are. We were founded in 1977. We were the first school for gifted children in the state of Colorado. And the school was originally based in Denver, but we have been on Prince Street in Littleton since 1990. And I think it's important to note that Littleton has provided us with that small, community, home-like feel that we think is important for nurturing these keen minds and compassionate hearts. And our proposal doesn't intend to change that. We want to maintain that. It's very important to our identity and our philosophy as a school. We are pre-K through 8th. Some of the things I'd like you to know is that MACKINTOSH, as it has developed through its 40 years, has become a beacon for educational leadership in the field of gifted education. Our teachers are routinely present and teach other teachers, both in the field of gifted education and also in the International Baccalaureate. We as a campus, as you may know, have received national and state recognition for some of our environmental and sustainability initiatives. In 2014, sixth graders wrote a grant application, and they brought $96,000 to our school to install solar panels on our 3 buildings. And since that time, it has encouraged us to follow the children's example, and we have promoted a number of environmental sustainability initiatives. And as a result of that, we received the Presidential Environmental Youth Award, the PEA Award, which was given through the EPA. We were invited to participate in what's known as the Environmental Leadership Program of the state of Colorado. We were invited at the bronze level. We applied for silver and achieved it, and we're going for gold. And then the last thing, which is very exciting, we have been nominated as a green ribbon school by the Colorado Department of Education, which our application also goes to Washington for final decision. We're the first ever independent school in Colorado that has been nominated. So we'll find out the end of this school year if we've received that award. A little bit about what we contribute, both to our students and we also believe to our community. We provide an education that we think is uniquely tailored for gifted students, and this factors into why we want more space, because we provide a kind of an inquiry-based approach to teaching and learning, which means that children need to be up and moving and exploring and innovating and creating. They can't do that in a space that's too small where desks are all lined up. That's not how we teach, and it's really not how 21st century education should take place in any event. We contribute to our community in a number of ways, and I have to say I've been meeting some of our neighbors in the process of looking at this proposal, and it has come to me even more strongly that MACKINTOSH is very much embedded in the neighborhood where we have been since 1990. I was talking to a neighbor who was here this evening, and she was telling me how she loves hearing the sound of children playing. And I was so glad to hear she liked that sound, but she does. And she really enjoys it, and she said it brings back very positive memories for her. And the other thing is, I had another neighbor, an elderly gentleman who came to look at our plan, and he said he just wanted to make sure that we weren't proposing high-rise buildings, and we said absolutely we weren't. And then he started talking about the fact that he enjoys hearing our school bell that's rung every morning at 9 o'clock. And I told him, because I thought that would increase his enjoyment, that was rung by preschool-age children. That's their responsibility on campus, and they ring that bell. And he said, well, I can set my watch by that every day. So we're an important part of the community. We do community outreach projects. We have adopted Ridgeview Park down the street. We have done service projects with the Littleton Village Preschool, Highline Memory Care, and just recently we've established a relationship with Break Bread in Littleton. We had an empty bowl lunch that our students cooked a meal, and then the proceeds from that provided about 200 meals through Break Bread in Littleton. We work very hard to be mindful of our neighbors and the impact that we have on the neighborhood. We host community events. We work to minimize noise and traffic. We have a relationship with St. Mary's School down the street. If we have an event that we think is going to have more cars on campus than we typically would have, they allow us to park there, and we shuttle folks from St. Mary's parking lot. They have a very big parking lot. And we've also been approved, I believe we've applied, and I think we've been approved to add 8 additional parking spaces on our campus. And we promote and support local merchants. We've had a number of parents who've come to our school, and then they've not only moved their children, they have moved their house. They've bought houses in the area. We do business with the local bank, and we certainly support a lot of the local merchants in terms of restaurants and other things that our parents and faculty are also interested in. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposal briefly, and then I'll hand it over to Mark Rudnicki, who will go into more detail. This is we actually made some improvements recently that we moved into a little over a year ago, and this is a picture of our main administration building. So expansion plans, one of the first things we did, because we wanted to maintain that feeling of a small, nurturing environment, we did not want to add an additional building, so we went around and looked at what was possible, what made sense for us to add on to the 3 existing buildings, because we didn't want to lose the feeling we had with that very large field in the center and keeping that percentage of open space. That's part of who we are. We don't want to change that. So we came up with a proposal that allows us 4,200 additional square feet, providing us with spaces that will allow our students to be up and moving and exploring and innovating, all important for 21st century teaching and learning, all staying within our 148 student capacity and maintaining the feel of our campus. We want to be good neighbors. We want the campus to feel the same but even better so we can better serve these students. And so I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark.
Thank you. My name is Mark Rudnicki. My firm is Mark Rudnicki Architecture, 6062 South Aberdeen Street in Littleton. I was hired in 2016 to do an administrative addition for MACKINTOSH Academy, which was completed in 2017. I was referred to the school by parents with children enrolled in the school with whom I designed their large house addition. I wasn't hired because I was a planning commissioner. I'd like to paint a little bit of a picture of my first impressions when I arrived at MACKINTOSH to do their addition. First thing, lack of space was clearly apparent. I noticed that there was a teacher conference, one-on-one, a teacher with a student in the middle of the stairwell heading downstairs. The head of school's office used to be where the entry area, reception area of the building was. The assistant head of school basically was in an office the size of a broom closet. Teachers' work desks in hallways and stairwell landings, 3 staff members crammed to an office built for one. Lunchroom, basically are picnic tables outside that the children eat at, even in cool weather, and God knows where they eat when it's cold. No conference room anywhere before I arrived in the entire complex, and basically storage strewn everywhere in corridors. It was crowded. If you spend half an hour like I did, the first half hour at the school, you'll see that McIntosh Academy is a dynamic learning facility in desperate need of additional space, not for additional students, but for additional auxiliary student programs, staff offices, and storage. As Carol mentioned, the original conditional use for the school was granted in '85. It was amended in 1998 to reduce the allowable height to 23 foot 8 inches for the construction of the gymnasium classroom building. Our request is to allow an increase in the allowable square footage for the school from the current 14,000 square feet to 18,200 square feet. The school currently has only 425 square foot remaining from the original conditional use cap. This request for an additional 4,200 square feet has been kept, in my opinion, modest and reasonable for the following. It allows for flexible multi-grade level classrooms, a science and technology lab, flexible space for the arts program. The space in the gymnasium will double as a stage for performances. Additional space for offices, storage, additional toy facilities, and a small kitchenette. The only change in the existing conditional use, as Carol also mentioned, is request for increase in square footage. All other requirements of the existing conditional use and the underlying RE zoning district will remain. It includes height limits, setback of buildings from property lines, minimum unobstructed open space, the 3 building limit, and the student enrollment cap of 148. It is anticipated that the additions will be completed in stages over several years as funds allow. The designs you see are illustrative, and maybe we can bring up the elevations if you would. Thank you. Let's see. They're illustrative, give you a general idea that they're residential and quiet, residential in scale and kept quiet, and match the existing buildings for scale, materials, and color. In particular, the addition for the gymnasium classroom building that most impact neighbors have been kept lower than the maximum height limit, with most of the addition placed on the north side away from the neighbors to the south. Landscaping and fencing will be improved at the additions to help mitigate any impacts of the adjacent neighbors. Finally, we are currently working with the city, an arduous task, to increase the parking spaces by 8. So if there's an increase in any staff, 8 additional spaces will take care of that. That's all my comments about the architecture. Diane, do you want to add anything else?
I just wanted to show you the last picture. Every school year, we have a first day of school photograph. And so that's what it looks like for this year. And I was thinking about that in terms of this presentation. We want to maintain, we want to sustain and build upon that kind of enthusiasm and energy. And within that intimate setting that we don't want to change, it's very important for us to have an expansion so that we can continue to build upon that kind of energy for learning and for teaching for our children. So thank you for considering our proposal.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Just a couple. Just a couple questions. So you had your neighborhood outreach and your public notice, and it looked like a few people attended. What were their comments?
The comments were mostly, well, Mark, you might help me because you were there in December. We had a few people come. They were mostly interested in seeing what the plan was and looking at whether it would impact the neighbors. I don't even remember specific questions.
There weren't too many.
No, I mean, I remember that one gentleman who came just last week to make sure we weren't putting in high-rise buildings, and I assured him that we weren't. We have another neighbor right next door to us, and I believe there was a letter, they sent an email to me saying they gave us a thumbs up. Their main question was, because they're right next to us, they're on the south side of Prince, they wanted to make sure that we put a fence up between the two properties. We have one. I think they wanted it extended. They also had some concern that one of the extensions would be high. When I showed them it was a one-story extension on that one building, they said, well, that wouldn't impact them. Those were the two specific comments. Yeah.
There was also a gentleman that looked familiar. He ended up being David Fisher, who was the architect for the gymnasium/classroom building that was done in 1985, and he was very supportive of MACKINTOSH and the building.
So it sounds like any of the neighbors' concerns you resolved with them.
I believe so. Yeah, I felt that way from the conversations we had, yes.
Just one more. So it sounds like you're very active in the community.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. That's part of what it says here. So you see yourself as compatible with the neighborhood and the community, specifically in the ways that you stated here about how you work with the neighbors, working with the businesses, and trying to keep your establishment, with your environmental issues and that sort of thing. And that's how you see yourself as compatible with your neighbors and your community then.
Yes, I think we're very consistent with the values and the feel of the neighborhood. And we've been here for a long time, since 1990, so it seems to me we're really embedded in the fabric of that neighborhood.
Thank you.
How does the pickup and drop-off work in the morning and afternoons? Or I'm assuming they're morning and afternoon.
Well, morning and afternoon. So there's morning car line and afternoon car line. In the morning, we have parents can drop off children between 8:10 and 8:30. And they come in, the entrance and exit it's the same. It's one entrance. We don't have two cuts on Prince Street, but we do have one way once they come in, so it's a circular drive. And they come around, and then there's a faculty member, sometimes two, meeting parents, opening doors, making sure children are safely escorted onto the walkway so they can reach their classrooms. In the afternoon, we have a staggered dismissal beginning at 3, which just makes it easier because we didn't want all the children leaving at the same time. So starting at 3 o'clock with the younger children, and that continues on till 3:40, which is when the 7th and 8th graders are picked up. And it's the same procedure. They come in, they go to the right, so it's one way, they come around, and there's always a faculty member there to escort children to the car.
Do cars ever back up onto Prince Street?
We have had some concerns. I mean, we've had a couple of times where parents who were in line told us that. And so what we've done, our offices, the administrative offices, look right out on where the drop-off and pickup is. Pickup at the end of the day, that's never an issue. There's more of a potential issue in the morning because it seems to come and go in waves, even though there's 20 minutes. So what we do, as soon as we see cars, that there are like 5 or 6 cars, then someone else from the office goes out, and then we escort children out. We do 2 cars at a time, so it moves pretty quickly.
Okay. And are cars limited as to which way they can go upon exit? Can they only go right? Can they also go left?
They are not currently limited.
Okay. And I guess that just getting to my question, I mean, it looks like you're from this from this diagram, it looks like you're adding 9 new spaces. Do you anticipate any issues with, it doesn't look like it's too much narrower than it was before.
I don't, because that's what we were working with the city and also the fire marshal and everyone looking at those designs to make sure it would be safe.
So there's plenty of room. It looks pretty narrow, but there's plenty of room for fire trucks to get in.
Yep.
To where they need to be.
That was approved.
Okay. And then, let's see, what was my other, oh, could you discuss the phasing, like when that's going to occur? Because it looked like there's a phase 1 through phase 3. Are they occurring over a period of time separately? Are they building all the additions together?
Well, it's partially, well, probably to a great extent, dependent on fundraising and being able to financially support this. We do know that our top priority is that gym building, which is phase 1. That allows us to do that raised stage and then the art space, which we desperately need. We don't have a final timeline. We're working with a feasibility study now in terms of raising funds. All of that will be figured out when we're just not to that stage right now. I mean, we have to look at the fundraising. We also have to look at what makes sense in terms of having construction on a campus when you also have school going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're essentially in the very preliminary stages here.
Well, we're preliminary in that I can't see us breaking ground anytime soon, but we're certainly working on it very hard to be able to move into this.
Right. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, the plans and the elevations are very illustrative. Nothing has really been designed inside. It's just a general impression of how the buildings are going. Each addition is going to tie in with each one of the 3 separate buildings' architecture. Floor plans need to be developed. We did a little bit of work on the gymnasium/classroom building for what's going to happen inside with the raised stage that will double as arts classroom, and as well as the space on the north side of that classroom gymnasium building. That would include a kitchenette, toilet room facilities, another art classroom, and general storage and mechanical. So. But nothing has really been designed pending the outcome of this hearing.
Yeah.
For clarification, this is Carol representing staff. The site development plan will show that phasing that needs to be done. What we're talking about right now is the additional square footage and not the actual site plan elements.
Okay. Else? That's it?
All right. Andrew? I drive by there coming from Heritage quite a bit, and I don't know if it's there or not, but do you have a crosswalk or street light or flashing sign that tells me this is a school zone and I should slow down?
There isn't one south of the school. There is a crosswalk. It doesn't have flashing lights, but there is a crosswalk that is north of the school on Prince.
Do you have school zone signs and things that identify that this is a learning establishment?
I'm not sure. Do we?
Not a bad idea to ask the city for that, especially perhaps the flashing sign.
Well, as you grow, I would like to help you with your prominence, so psst, school.
Well, it is a little, if you don't know it's there, it's a little hard to see that entryway.
Well, it is. And then I just can't resist. Any floodplain issues we should be aware of?
Had to get that in. No, there are not. We're on the top of the hill.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
That's it.
Well, not floodplain, but I was going to ask a drainage question, same thing. I don't anticipate the magnitude of what you're proposing is going to result in any materially incremental amount of runoff to your neighbors, I assume.
No, there's the whole field. The drainage is basically to the northeast, gentle slope across the play fields. We'll be, when our additions go in, we'll be improving, especially the west side of that gymnasium classroom building has a sunken area that's a bit marshy.
Okay, all right, great. If no other questions, then we would like to open the public hearing, and believe the list is being retrieved. Just to reiterate the ground rules, anyone who wishes to speak will be afforded 3 minutes. If you're familiar with soccer games, 30 seconds remaining, you'll see a yellow card, which is a warning, and at the end of 3 minutes, you'll get a red card, which means you're out of the game. So,
Run a rough ship.
well, there you go. Yeah, take no prisoners. Okay, that having been said, let's, and if you're not on the list, you're also welcome to speak. We'll invite anybody who didn't sign up to participate as soon as we run through the list here. So the first individual on the list is Jason Weidgren, who is in favor of the project. Did not indicate if they want to speak, but looks like you're coming down. Please, again, for the record, give your name and address before your comments.
Sure. My name is Jason Whittigren. I live at 30 Canyon Cedar in Littleton. I also have 3 girls, excuse me, 3 girls that go to MACKINTOSH Academy. So you can imagine I'm in favor of the project. There are so many things I love about MACKINTOSH, and some of the people in the room are familiar with the school, but they have just an incredible faculty and staff there. They have a really neat curriculum with a lot of hands-on active learning that I wish I had had myself as a kid. They do a great deal of community outreach. Diane Dunn only scratched the surface on what they do at that school. So, you know, the park, they've adopted the park. They go to the local shut-ins and do performances. They host a women or a girls in science program every year, which just happened actually a few weekends ago, and so on and so forth. And the kids they all get involved in these things, and that's really, really great. One thing I don't love about the school, though, are the buildings, the facilities. They're very limiting in some ways, and Mark alluded to some of these problems on the one building that's recently had some renovations, but I'm going to give you another example about the gymnasium building, which, as Diane Dunn said, that would be the first priority for renovation. So one of the great things about MACKINTOSH is they have this incredible performing arts teacher, and you would not believe what she can get, like my 3 shy little girls, to do in front of a big scary audience. The problem, though, is as a parent, you have to get there an hour before the show starts or you miss it, because they set up in the middle of the gym floor, which squeezes out the PE classes, of course, and then they put folding chairs for the audience. So if you aren't in the front row, you can't see what's going on, because those kids are so short that even if you don't have a 7-footer in front of you, you still can't see what's going on. So you either have to stand around the back where you can see but can't hear, or you can sit in the regular chairs and not see but hear. And then, of course, the folding chairs themselves don't have there's no storage for them. So they get pushed into corners in the tiny bathroom that serves the building and places like that. But that's just one example of how, if there was a stage where they could perform, it would make such a tremendous difference. And I think all of the proposed changes would make those kind of differences to the program. So I hope you'll vote in favor. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Zachary McFarland, who is in favor of the project and wishes to speak.
Hi, Zach McFarland, 8280 South Holly Street in Centennial. So I work at First Bank, and I've worked with MACKINTOSH Academy for a couple years now as their main lender and banking officer and contact. And I'd just like to say, upright people, everybody that I've worked with has been awesome. They have a huge heart, which you can just see very clearly. I guess my input here would be just, from a finance perspective, they do very well. I'm a customer to First Bank since November 1990 when they moved to Littleton. They've handled all their accounts as agreed. I've done a couple loans for them. and they've handled all those as agreed. I think that all these phases, I've been to the campus a few times, and all these phases are going to be very well welcomed. I think that it's nice that they're going to keep the open space concept, because that is really cool, and just to keep these kids active and engaged, especially in today's learning environment, is awesome. And I think that it's going to be a great addition both for the community, for the school, for the kids, and I hope you guys vote in favor. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Carl Paulson, who indicated you interested in speaking?
No, I'm very happy to hear the comments from here.
Thank you much. And Jim Del Pont.
Excuse me. Jim Del Ponte, 895 Front Range Road. We've been neighbors to McIntosh for about 30 years, and we have a 200-foot property line between the two, and it's got a nice 8-foot hedge all along there, and not once have the kids ever tried to climb over it or climb through it.
That you've noticed.
Yeah, or I'd have caught them. And then I have a barn in the back there, so between their gym and my barn, it's a good place to collect trash or extra equipment or whatever and let it just get trashy. They've never done that. They keep it clean. They keep it mowed. And the management has always been wonderful to us. They're informative, they're receptive to us, and they've just been wonderful. So I just want to mention that. I think you ought to approve this.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would offer up my apologies as well on name pronunciation. I've obviously missed a few already, but we'll do our best. Fran Del Ponte? And you can pull that down. There you go.
I'll just say kudos to what Jimmy said too, but the part that I enjoy the most, we had 5 children, and I'm used to what I call happy sounds from children. I don't think I've ever heard a quarrel or mean words. They're just having fun, and when our grandchildren would come to play, they'd be begging me to let them go over to climb the fence and go over to play with the kids. And they've been very conscientious neighbors. Like when I couldn't get out after some surgery, and I asked Diane to come if she could stop by to get us some plans or something. She came and brought them over and answered any question that I had, and so I love how outwardly, well, they let you know what's going on. I never asked a question that I had to apologize for, or that I thought that we were a pain to them. They really want the best for everybody, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Megan Knight. Okay. Is in favor of, does not need to speak. Lisa Connor is in favor. Does she? Oh, you did. Okay, thank you. And Laura Posbach. Okay, Laura's in favor, does not wish to speak. Candace Vortman is in favor. Does she wish to speak?
Yes, no, in favor, no.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, not sure on this one. Marnix.
They know.
Okay. I'll let you pronounce it. How about that? Is in favor and does wish to speak. So good.
Okay. I'm Marnik Sugwater, and I live at 855 Front Range Road, and I'm an alumni of MACKINTOSH. So our house directly borders the school, so we get to see a lot of the school, and have been around there a lot. And when I was a student there, I thought the school really contributed a lot to my education, because there were so many extracurricular activities and so much stuff that I could do outside of school, and I got to pursue things such as the theater, which I'm still pursuing now in high school, and we're about to put on a production of Beauty and the Beast. and things like that. So I'm still really engaged in all those extracurricular activities that I began kind of pursuing there. And I think that that's really valuable, and that that's something that's worth like continuing to build on, and just continuing to like be aware that kids want a lot of different things and are a lot of different ways, and should get to try a lot of different things to become diverse, interesting people. So I think you should vote in favor, and I think it's going to be like a really valuable growth. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to assume it's Mr. Hoogvater. Is that? Very good. Thank you much. Joe Posbach. Okay. Thank you. Marie Adams. In favor? Wish to speak? Okay. Clara Butler and, let's see, Dan Butler and Lisa Mello all are in favor, and it looks like they may or may wish to speak. Come on down.
Hello, Clara Butler. I am a parent of a 7th grader.
Lower that if it's easier for you. There you go.
And I'm a parent of a 7th grader. I just wanted to say that I do a lot of the fundraising for our auction, and we really work and strive to develop relationships, reciprocal relationships within the community. We have things called Dine and Donate, where a portion comes back to our school, but our families go out to the community. We did a book fair, so we try to have a very strong presence, not just, you know, with the school, but outside of the school, especially with the Littleton area. So there is a huge benefit with us growing, because as we grow, our community grows. Thank you.
Great. Before you leave, make sure you give your name and address just to get it on the record.
Clara Butler, 7771 South Curtis Drive, Unity, Littleton, Colorado, 80120. Thanks.
Thank you. Rebecca Beavers, in favor? Wish to speak? Please.
Hi, Rebecca Beavers, 2887 West Long Circle, Unit E, Littleton. My youngest, Nick Bytel, as well. I had one comment that I did not hear presented already, and it was a need for the additional space. Nick has an older brother who is right now able to do an independent study for math, but finding a space to do that independent study has been challenging. He's kind of sat in the desk of one of the administrative staff. He's sat in another corner of a classroom, so having additional space helps some of these diverse learners have another opportunity to pursue the learning the way they need to learn. He's actually doing online learning with Khan Academy, so he can do his self-paced learning. So that is the one element I haven't heard, so we're very much in favor. Do you want to say anything? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you much. Annie Slouthour? Do not wish to speak. Thank you. Curtis Eckhart is in favor. You wish to speak?
Grandpa Kurt at MACKINTOSH. I'm just piling on. I'm in favor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can't read this one. Okay. You okay? Or do you want to speak?
In favor, but I'm a neighbor.
You have to come down to the, yeah, sorry. And need name and address, please.
Ashley Brawl, 7088 South Prince Street. So I'm 2 lots to the south. I just want to say I'm a neighbor and in favor. My son is in pre-K there, and we love the school and love being able to walk to the school. That's it.
Thank you very much. Nancy, I'll take your word for it.
Hello, I'm Nancy Muhich. I live at 2300 West Jameson Way in Littleton, and I am a teacher at MACKINTOSH, and we love our students. We really do. I think that as a staff, we do amazing things for our kids, but we are limited by our space. And the spirit is willing, the buildings are weak, so help us strengthen that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Stecklar or Stecklick?
I'm Beth Stecklack. I'm an administrator at MACKINTOSH Academy, and also I live at 6567 South Prince Street. And I just wanted to say I actually brought my children to MACKINTOSH in 2001 and joined as a faculty member in 2003. And in doing that, that brought me to Littleton. We actually moved our home and ended up on Prince Street down the street, and I've just loved being in this town. And I really, we spent a lot of time in this planning process of how does this really fit into the spirit of Littleton. It's very important to me as a resident, and it's important to me as an administrator that we're really part of the community and continue to represent what this community means for me as a family, having brought my children here and becoming a Littleton resident. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of speakers who signed up. If anyone else wishes to make a comment, they're more than welcome to come down at this time. Please. And state your name and address, if you please.
I'm Dana Brandorf, and I live at 2404 West Costilla Avenue, which is a few blocks to the south of the school. I was just concerned to find out about traffic patterns. My children attended St. Mary's, and so there's a lot of traffic on Prince Street, especially during school hours. So, and I back up onto Prince Street, so it can be challenging to get out of my driveway. But that, listening to all the comments, I've always never had a problem with MACKINTOSH Academy or St. Mary's. They've all been, both schools have been very, very good in the neighborhood. Actually, you wouldn't even know that MACKINTOSH Academy was there, quite frankly, because you can't really see it from the road. But one question I do have is when it was built in 1985, or when it was approved in 1985, it seems like what has changed? If you still have 148 students, which is what they built it for then, what are we seeing that has changed? Is it the change in teaching? Is it the change of how many teachers you need for students? Or what is it that really, and that's a question for the school, why the 35% increase in space for the same amount of students is my one question. So
okay. That's it. Thank you. Any other inquiries or questions or comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And applicant, would you like to respond to any of the feedback you heard?
I would like to respond to the last question, and it's a really excellent question. Education has come a long way. We have learned a lot about what provides meaningful education for children. And so you were absolutely correct when you said, is it the way you teach and the way children learn? Yes, it is. It is, as I mentioned earlier, we currently have a cap of 148. There is no way we could serve 148 children well in our current facilities, because that was based on the idea that you could have kids lined up in rows with the teacher at the front and all the children sitting very quietly in their seats, and that is not the way we teach and learn. And as I said before, it's really not the way any children should be taught. In order to be prepared for the 21st century, if you look at what is listed as 21st century skills, things like communication, collaboration, creativity, critical problem solving, and using hands-on, learning how to actually translate ideas into action, none of those will work in an environment in which children are all lined up in rows. And that's exactly the reason why we need more space to be able to do that. One of the things we didn't talk about is on our plan, there's a whole science and design space. We have science, but we don't have really the opportunity for kids to design the way they should. So I hope that answers that last speaker's question, because it was an excellent question.
Thank you. Commissioners, any discussion and/or a motion, if you please?
I move to approve.
Okay. Let's see here.
Do you want me to read the whole
Yeah,
thing?
why don't we go ahead and actually read the full motion to approve, if you please, if you're in agreement with it.
I move to approve PC Resolution Number 05-2018, approving the amendment to the conditional use request for McIntosh Academy at 7018 South Prince Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to commend the Academy for so seriously taking the concerns of your neighbors and your community and evolving yourself with them, and to see your teachers, your students, the parents, the community members, your banker come here to speak for you. It's nice to see that. It's actually nice to see a crowd that's actually in favor of something that's going on here, and profusely so. So thank you for being a good neighbor.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't, in the entire time that I've been on this commission, I've never had a meeting where we've had even, I think, 50-50 support, let alone 99.99% support. So it's great to see. Really happy you guys came out and advocated for your community and your school. And the only concern that I have that was brought up just briefly would be on Prince Street. You really ought to have some blinking lights and some 20-mile-an-hour signs for when you're at least dropping off, since it's a short time and it can back up, and it sounds like there's a lot of kids that live near the school and walk to school, and that would be my concern, and should be the city's concern as well.
I'd echo that directly, and I don't know what the process is. Carol, I guess I'll ask you. How do we? Is that something that we could do as a motion, or to what? Do we do a traffic study? Do we do do we add traffic calming devices as a requirement to this motion here? How do we incorporate?
I think the best route would be to
If
have.
indeed the applicant likes this idea.
So would be to have the applicant work with the city's traffic engineer and the Public Works Department and work with them to see what type of, I don't know if there's certain requirements that need to be met, at a certain threshold to warrant it, but there might be something that needs to be met, but they could work very closely with Aaron Human, the traffic engineer at the city, and he and Tim Weaver can sit down with them and talk about striping or any lights or signals or slow crossing zone and stuff like that.
So is that something we need to do as a condition, or is that something we can just make as a recommendation to?
I believe making it as a
No,
recommendation.
you don't need to do it as a condition. In fact, this is an administrative action. What I would recommend is that the school work with the city staff and we can refer this to the traffic engineer, but this is really would not be appropriate to do as a condition.
With the wholehearted recommendation, the traffic calming devices be taking place. Yeah, I think as I read through the various neighborhood plans, it definitely is, it preserves the integrity of the area. I appreciate the architect's use of rural vernacular. I think he did a nice job on that. For those of you playing along at home, that was for you. I really appreciate the use of the location without the impact of the neighborhood. I'll be honest with you, for years I didn't even know it was there. And I think you're sitting on a gem. I like the history that you got. It's a place where talented kids are growing every day, and I think you're lucky to be there. Great asset for our community, and I really wish you the best of luck for the next 40 years.
Yeah, the rural vernacular was a shot, no question about it.
That was for you.
That was a cold shot. Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. Based upon the evidence presented and the compliance with code and the comprehensive plan, I'm going to support this. As an aside, I can tell you that McIntosh was crowded 15 years ago when our son was there, and given that the number of students haven't always been at 148, but certainly is it probably close there too now. It seems to me that it's reasonably long overdue. I think that I totally agree with the traffic calming issues as well, and given that the community development director has a student there, I'm assuming motivation on the city's part. So with that, I would invite the planning commissioners to vote. There we go.
That's unanimous and the motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. See, that doesn't happen usually either at the end of a land use decision.
Just we don't get applause. We don't get applause at all.
And why don't we do a 5-minute recess to clear the room, and then I will turn control of the meeting back over to Chair Rudnicki.
let's proceed to the next item. By the way, I wish to thank Planning Commission for their wise decision on the last case. Your comments about yellow card, red card, and soccer were a little over the top, but
So appropriate with the World Cup coming up.
Yeah, no, exactly. Fortunately, we didn't have to run anyone off.
yeah. Okay. Next up is PC Resolution 06-2018 regarding the Mineral Station Area Framework. Start out, I'm not going to bother asking if anybody's visited the site. Everybody's visited the site. We've all been discussing and going through various drafts of the framework. So let's proceed with a staff presentation. And applicant, too, all rolled up in one.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Jocelyn Mills, presenting this on behalf of staff and the city. I do not have a PowerPoint, and I'm sorry my voice is coming in and out, but just briefly want to go over this for you. So this is the resolution regarding the Mineral Station Area Framework. As stated in the document, is to provide direction for the city's efforts to improve the South Santa Fe Drive and mineral intersection, as well as to guide future planning and decision-making for this area of the city. That's the broad overview. Wanted to remind you that the draft that you have in front of you has the date of today, March 12th. This is the final draft, and community open house was held on the February 15th, and at that point it was the previous draft dated 2/15. It was also posted on Open Littleton, and those comments are attached to the to the packet. And we did make some changes based on those public comments. So the draft dated tonight has incorporated those. Quickly, staff analysis relative to the citywide plan. We found that this framework does meet a component of Goal 1, a dynamic Littleton, Goal 2, an outdoor Littleton, Goal 3, a connected Littleton, and Goal 4, a distinctive Littleton. Additionally, it appears to meet some transformative actions also in the citywide plan, as highlighted in the staff communication. So based on that, staff finds the proposed mineral station framework in compliance with the citywide plan, and we do recommend that Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council regarding this resolution. I did want to note a couple of items that came to my attention today from Commissioner Stallman. And that is, just to clarify, in the staff communication on the first page, the second paragraph under background mentions it as the CDOT Preliminary Environmental and Linkage Study, PEL. I guess word find or whatever did a typo there. It's actually supposed to be Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, so that was a typo on that. And then on page 5 of the actual draft document, the section regarding the South Platte River Corridor vision on page 5, it looks like we forgot to take out a couple of words, and the second line in that first paragraph starts the corridor vision, and I think we just forgot to delete that because the sentence actually should start with the South Platte Working Group is made up of jurisdictions within the corridor. So just that's a typo we need to fix. And then secondly, under that same section, the second bullet says to restore and revitalize the river and its habitat while maintaining its role as a river conveyance. And it should instead say, while maintaining its role in the flood conveyance area. So, excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm very embarrassed. Sorry. With that, I will answer any questions.
Just under, typos or little corrections, I noticed at least in one spot you referred to framework plan. I know you were trying to go through and get rid of the plan portion.
Yes.
Although,
darn it.
I
said, darn it, if we missed one.
At least one, so you might do it go back one last time.
Yep.
Also, been talking to a few community members that would love to see the thing called a framework, not a plan, but a framework guide. And to me, always, framework has always been kind of a dangling expression, but not that I'm demanding it tonight, but a framework guide sounds a lot better than just framework. So, just a thought. Okay. Probably need to keep our questions short because of the speech problems here. Any questions for staff? Go ahead, Dory.
Always look at me first.
Oh, well.
It doesn't matter which side of the camera.
How does this relate to the Magna Carta and the spread of Western democracy?
Actually, it's a very important piece.
Okay, please
For
start
this-
at birth.
Yeah, for this area of the city, it's important to set the future, you know what I mean? Conversations around the traffic and the intersection there, and as well as just in general, gives us a framework as we move forward.
One of the things we heard routinely was recreation, 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 preserve the nature, preserve the nature. Everybody gets there's a railroad there, everybody gets there's a road there. I don't know that I care and I don't know that I don't. Was there a decision made between putting transportation as the primary, or the first chapter here, over recreation? Or is that just the way it worked out?
I wouldn't say that that's how it got to that, and it's not one over the other. I think it's supposed to address two things. If you remember from the community engagement from 2016, the majority of the comments said, hey, we got to figure out the traffic and the traffic issues in this area of the city. So that did rise to the level of concern based on that community input. So I agree with you. That was a big chunk of how that transportation piece is in there. But then also, you're right, there were other elements, in recreation as a big component. So you'll notice, I think, throughout the rest of the plan, we have addressed those ideas and those concepts, both in identifying other important plans that have been adopted for this area of the city and coordinating with those, as well as just putting in action steps around recreation and making sure that decision-making takes those items into account in the future.
Okay. Where does economic development live in this entire thing? Where does retail stores, mixed-use developments? I didn't really see it too clearly in what I was looking at here. Maybe I didn't see it enough.
Yeah, if you remember what we ended up, just why we're calling it a framework, is more of the broader picture. So in this document, it does have, if you remember the 2016 or 2015, we did hire some outside consultants, and they did do a market assessment. So that is an attachment to this plan, and that really went through, at this moment in time, kind of what are the issues for when should development come through the door. And if you also remember, part of the assessment at that time, they did articulate through their research that they felt that there wasn't market pressure for the stationary to, develop with this cycle. So just trying to lay the framework for some future conversations.
And so the most recent data we have, aside from everybody constantly seems to be doing a study on the place, our data is 2015 primarily that we're using here from that study of transportation,
From the
retail,
information.
economic use.
For the purposes of this framework, yes, that's true. Yep.
Are there any current proposals on that site or plans in motion through the city on the north end of the Enser site?
On the north end of the Enser site, the only thing that just recently was approved through Planning Commission was that special exception permit.
Right.
We have heard nothing or have no active applications from either the north side or the southern side at this moment in time.
Are we aware if the land is under contract or not?
We are aware that the north 30 has been sold, unaware if the southern side, they did have it under contract. That has since gone by the wayside. Not sure, haven't heard if they have it under contract again.
Thanks for talking so long.
Just a couple things. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder on some of this stuff. I'll focus on two real quick things. In The second paragraph in Chapter 1 says the term framework is used in recognition that the information contained in the document is a broad overview of current issues and topics and can be adapted to change over time as the issues and topics evolve. I mean, to me, that basically says a lot. This thing's 80-20 rule kind of stuff. We've got, we've outlined the major themes or contextual attributes of what's going on in this location. It's not a finished set of guidelines or designs per se, or even anything more granular than what it is. A recognition of information contained as a broad overview of current issues and topics that are going to change. I think it's really good. I think it meets the needs of, I think it meets the charge we were given by council. I commend staff for the work that's been put into it. There's always tweaking we can do to this thing, and frankly, it's going to get tweaked over time, in particular because of the PEL. I mean, that thing is beyond integral to what we're talking about doing in that location. This thing's going to be an evolving document. I think it's actually sort of interesting on page 6, it talks about the Santa Fe corridor plan from 2000. And the plan goals relevant to Mineral Station include achieve a high quality and consistent urban design, unique character to Littleton, provide access and circulation that promotes safety and optimizes development and redevelopment opportunities, develop the Santa Fe corridor as a high quality employment-based land use area within the city, and promote TOD within a quarter-mile radius of the Mineral Station. I think we're already evolving beyond a lot of what was envisioned when that particular plan was adopted 18 years ago. And I'm not going out on too much of a limb, I don't think, to suggest that what we're doing today is going to evolve in the next 10 to 20 years, and it'll have to, because that's, the PEL's going to take that long, the market cycle is going to change, so forth and so on. So I think this is a really good stake in the ground, and I'm in favor of sending it to council.
David?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, I guess. To me, I agree with Commissioner Graham that, recreation is a huge part of this, and the open space. And I feel the same way as a lot of residents do, that it's, it really improves the quality of life, it improves the corridor, and it would be a great loss to lose some, any of that that we've got now. And I think in the future, we, expanding that should be a priority. But I think, it's called the Mineral Station Area Framework, and it's kind of TOD centralized, light rail centralized. Santa Fe and Mineral are huge. It's a huge intersection there. I think transportation is justly first. And the thing that I like is that we've got in here on goal number 2, the multimodal connectivity. My concern and my focus, I guess, has always been bicycle and pedestrian traffic. I know we live in a car-centric society, but the more we can promote bikes and pedestrians, the better for me. And then just the other comment I have is I like the word framework by itself. No offense, Mark, but the word framework suggests to me it's a scaffolding. It's something for other things to grow upon or to be built upon. So that's just my preference.
Robin?
I have a request for when we do more of these in the future. When we make iterations of it, could you show us the marked up version so we can see what's changed from the previous time? Just helps to know kind of what to focus more on. I didn't think about that till now, but when I was looking at it, I was curious, where did the changes come in from the community versus what was there? And so it would just be helpful to me, maybe nobody else, but just to see the iterations in that manner. I found it, well, actually I'm appreciative of watching through this whole process of when you started with the basic and how you incorporated each time, whether it's the planning commission, the council, the community, how you really incorporated what people were saying. So it changed the document to be so inclusive of a lot of aspects of the community. And that was pretty cool to watch that happen and see the changes come across that way. I did notice a typo, on page 7, it talks about 60,000 vehicles north and south. And then later it talks about, and I can get the page number, let's see, I think page 14, then it says 50,000.
Darn it.
So the one says vehicles north-south a day through Littleton. The other one just talks about Santa Fe. I don't know if that's why there's a 10,000 vehicle difference, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Can I let you know about that one? So we did receive some community comments about 50,000, and that seemed low because that's what we were talking about 10, 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
we went back and verified on the counts and on the map, and if you add them up, they basically estimate 60. So we just missed it in that one on
At one
page
space,
14.
okay.
So
And I think that's page 14, if that helps.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You can go to it, and you could probably get it faster.
Oh, yep, I see it right there. Yep, perfect. Thank you.
So that was that. I was curious, on just going to page 8, we're talking about the Pell. At least it was, it's page 8 on something. It might be on here. Hang on. Let me see. Yeah, it is page 8, where it says the Pell study may develop a series of alternatives. And just going to the end of the paragraph, it talks about, go away. Then it'll incorporate key components such as accessibility, multimodal planning for bikes and pedestrians, which Dave was talking about. Curious, do we know anything about if the Pell is going to take a look at autonomous vehicles, since that's the up-and-coming thing, and this process takes so many years? It seems like there might be some possibility for them to be looking at that at the same time.
Yeah, so the intention here is to just give you the high level of what the PEL generally will do, and certainly it'll look at a variety of details around traffic, autonomous cars, and movement, and all of those things. So it all gets wrapped up into the overall umbrella. It's my understanding, and that's more of a detail.
It is a
at that
detail.
moment in time.
It's just become so prominent, and I keep getting reports about it, and reading what the research says, and knowing how long it takes to actually fix roads or to expand them and such. By then, who knows where that will be.
Right, and remember too, because we talk about this a lot as the commission, when you get to that chapter 4, we really tried to put that into the goal and the action steps. And so this entire document gets handed over to the PEL project folks. And then this is, you know what I mean? They have to look through all of this and take direction from it. So it's also
It is very pronounced later on, definitely. And just on chapter 6, get to my bookmark. There's, I really appreciated where it talks about character and design goal 2, and that would be on page 22. It talks, almost everyone where it talks about further neighborhood plans, if it's necessary to better reflect current conditions, issues, and goals, to update and expand that neighborhood plan. Because I think that's something important for us to be considering, especially as we're looking at our comp plan. I just look at the South Park, and the only thing it says in there is to maintain the character, but it gives no description of what that actually means. So I was glad to see that emphasized in here, because to make those decisions, we really need better neighborhood plans. Agreed. So thanks for putting that in there too. I appreciate the work you guys have done.
Okay.
I'm all for just keeping it as framework. I agree that we wrote about, in the beginning you described what we meant by framework. I've heard the same comments you had about maybe it's not the right title per se, but I think the description in here describing what you mean by framework is sufficient.
It wasn't something I was going to out for an amendment on unless I got some support here. So I don't have any technical questions. I will have some summation comments when we vote, before we vote. Let's see, we've gone over several drafts of this. Nice to see that the comments for the most part have been included. especially references to the big elephant in the room, the Enzer property to the south. That more references there. Any other questions for staff?
Are we satisfied with the font?
I like wingdings.
Is it the rural vernacular font that you?
Can we get Garamond or Arial choices?
We got short timers.
I do.
Overruled. Well, now, since this is a public hearing, we'll now open up to public comments. There's one gentleman here. Does anyone wish to speak about this? I see the head shaking no, so we have no public comment, so we'll close the public comment and entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of Planning Commission Resolution 06-2018, recommending approval of the Mineral Station Area Framework, which forwards a favorable recommendation to City Council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any last-minute comments? Oh, I'll go ahead and give mine.
Not having to do with font.
Out of order again. Let's see, just generally, it's one of the better studies I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of these over the years. This is well done. Well written and understandable, and few typos, and the sentences are strung together properly. Nice job. I wanted to make this clear that this is not a master plan. This is basically a framework, and I come up with 4 reasons why this framework is needed now. One is it will help guide Littleton's interest in when the Pell study, which means planning environmental linkages study, when that study is commenced. It also, very importantly, preserves the public input on opportunities and concerns about the station, surrounding properties, and the parking and the traffic, and at Santa Fe and Mineral. Third, it will help guide the future master plan once the Pell study is complete. And finally, CDOT's main interest typically in the Pell study will be to move as many cars as possible in the least amount of time. Our framework states clearly that Littleton has additional concerns and desires. And then I want to conclude with 2 quotes, one that Commissioner Stallman already mentioned, but it's worth mentioning again. On page 2, the term framework is used in recognition that the information contained in the document is a broad overview of current issues and topics and can be adapted to change over time as these issues and topics evolve. Very important item there. Secondly, on page 6, it talks about, quotes, a partnership might be formed with future developers to offer incentives for river-friendly mixed-use development that takes advantage of the transit stop at Mineral and that also protects some portion of the site as a buffer to South Platte Park. Very important as the expression partnership. That's all the comments I have. Any other comments? Time to vote.
And the motion carries unanimously.
Great. It's off to City Council. When will it come before them?
On March 20th. March 20th.
Be like a first reading, or will they do it all at once?
A resolution, one time.
Resolution. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any staff comments? Okay. I can mention a few things. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, I'll be real brief here. Just a little recap of what's going on here. Downtown guidelines and standards, we've already had 4 committee meetings. John and I have been attending, representing Planning Commission. There's 2 remaining meetings, March 5th, March 16th, and April 9th. There'll be a joint study session, I think with, historic preservation, that will be coming up. Secondly, lots going on here. The Bellevue Corridor Study is proceeding. Final draft plan I have in my book, April 9th. Is that still
I think
so?
for the next big thing for the Bellevue project is there's another community meeting to look at a draft plan on March 22nd.
Okay. Will it still be, will we still be seeing something April 9th?
I can't remember the exact, but it's around that time frame.
Okay.
Yes.
Third, if you looked in, I attended a little bit of the meeting. Council voted last Tuesday to start the comprehensive plan 2040 process. We're talking with hiring a consultant. This is going to be a lot of work for us that are remaining on the Planning Commission. Very exciting. Last, 3 new members will be joining the Planning Commission. Dan Miller will be a regular member. Craig Coronado, who served on the Planning Commission before, will be alternate number 1. And Sherry Allman will be alternate number 2. And, there is a 5th item. The PC legal training will be 6:30 on April 6th. That's all I have. Anything else?
I think it's for all boards and commissions.
What's that?
That legal, the training that you're referencing is for all boards and commissions, and everyone who will be on or is still on the commission will get an invitation to that. So more to come on that.
All right.
Hold on, is there also just a general boards and commissions training? Didn't I see an email about that? What day is that?
That's what we're referencing.
Oh, that
yes.
is.
Yeah. Nothing else. We'll adjourn to the conference room for the Plan Development Overlay Study session.
The sketch plan got signed, so the sketch plan for the parking lot is done.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I still want to talk to you about just generally the processes. It was tough. Okay.
Good, this many slides.
You got your salt and your sugar over there.
I didn't bring lunch today either, so.
That's not good.
Dinner.
Lunch and dinner.
Nothing to say on that. Well, let's begin with our study session. We're discussing potential, let's see, ID number 18-088, potential code amendments to the Plan Development Overlay, Chapter 9, Title 10, and Chapter 2, Zone Districts. So, staff, take it away.
Thank you. And yes, we're talking about some changes to the PDO, potential changes that staff wants to bring forward. And I have Steve Kemp with me as well as Carol Coon, planning mentor. So we can answer any of your questions. But first, we've got some four high-level reasons why we're talking to you tonight. I want to talk about removing an option for plan development overlay from residential districts. Eliminate the option to reduce parking through a PDO. Remove the density increase option from the PDO intent statement and clarify densities, floor area ratios in the PDO. Move those from the respective or into the respective zone districts. And what does that mean? We'll get into that here as we show you. We have a lot of graphics, but it's just to reiterate and hopefully visually show you what we're proposing for changes. So that, a couple more. Modify allowances for PDO in both the C and T zone districts. They have specific requirements. We want to modify those. And then some minor clarification to the zone districts themselves. So with that, quickly, here's a picture so that you can see in zone districts.
Does this piggyback on any previous zoning code conversation we've had, or is this a new project?
This would be something new code amendment.
Now new look at code amendments. And so the use tables that we came up with a year ago
are not connected to this. We're trying to work through minor updates to our zoning code to make it more workable. So Carol and I, along with Steve, have a list of things we just want to clean up, and so this is under that category.
Can you back up? What was the general idea for removing the option for the PDO for residential district? What was the underlying reason for doing it?
That's a fabulous question. And the underlying reason for that is, since Carol and I both came here, we've always heard, well, residential zone districts, they're solid, they're pretty good, we don't have to worry about changing of character. Well, it turns out a PDO is an option that can be used currently in any zone district in Littleton. So potentially, through a PDO, that does have the ability to change the characteristics within a residential neighborhood. Versus if someone has a lot in a residential district, but say maybe it's too skinny or something like that, you would still have the ability through a variance process to get some relief from a requirement. But the PDO really, as you guys know, the only exchange for getting relief is the higher quality of design. So you do have the opportunity to potentially change, the character of that area. So staff believes at this time that we're recommending that you get rid of it out of the residential zone district.
It's pretty far reaching. You can go all the way to, it goes to R5, which is 43.5 units per acre. So it's all inclusive, eliminating the overlay.
And in CA, you were allowed to increase the density up to 100 dwelling units per acre through the PDO process, and without having to go to city council. So an increase in density is a use change, and allowing that without going to city council is just not done like anywhere else. Yeah, through a PDO.
The absence of a PDO legally isn't changing a zoning construction and taking something away from someone, is it?
Well, no, I mean, this doesn't function like an overlay. In the traditional legal world, a overlay would be a mechanism placed over top of an existing zoning district that would then require enhanced and additional standards that you would have to meet. This functions really in a bizarre way, because what it does is it says, here are the basic city standards, and you get to come in and do an overlay and actually not comply with those standards, but do less, which it's totally contrary to any type of overlay, either in the statutes that you would find if you looked at the basic uniform planning statutes across the country, and I mean, frankly, it just doesn't make sense. It goes against every both legal rule and planning rule that you would expect to have in place for an overlay.
An overlay usually adds more. You keep the bottom, and it's an additional, it's like the cherry on top. So you've got this area, it's special, like design standards would come in and be something extra on top of it. This is saying you can deviate from all the stuff through the PDO, even increase density, change parking requirements, add height, reduce the lot size. You can do it all. Like any performance standards of your zone district, you could throw them out as long as you gave us a better level of design, which is not what an overlay is. It's a subtractive thing with the way the PDO is being applied.
Yeah, I was thinking, why bother having R1, R2, R3 regulations, and then, the line in the sand you have to obey, but here's a little escape clause that doesn't make any sense. And as I've said many times, I don't care what, as an architect, I don't care what the regulations are, as long as they're clear, concise, and fairly interpreted by the city.
And what this disposes is that because of the way it functions, essentially, why do straight zoning? Why do anything other than this current PDO and just walk away from all the rules?
Okay. By the way, I don't think we're not doing any takings here. The R1, R3, R5, et cetera, those regulations stay in place. The PDO overlay is something that, an overlay that we handle. It's our administrative process. We can change it. Nobody's losing anything. You'd have to apply for it.
I feel very comfortable with this, not a takings issue here. Right. You can't really argue, I have a reasonable investment-backed expectation that I ought to be able to do less than what the zoning code says.
How do you know you'll get it?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if I not argue that point in the courts, I'm very comfortable with that.
It functions like a variance, but without having to prove hardship, and it goes to you instead of Board of Adjustment. So that's what they're saying. They can't meet the minimums, so they say, I want to do a PDO, and I'll give you this fancier thing in exchange, and so there's no hardship.
Here's your zoning. If you don't like it, get another piece of zoning elsewhere. That's what we're saying.
We're recommending taking it out of the residential option.
Just wanted to have a little discussion about that.
So here's, just in case you were curious, how many, just overall in the city, here's where we have all the approved PDOs to date. One change that I'm not sure is in your packet was in the intent and applicability section. We did fix it. So just to point out, this is the first change, again, back to what is the point of a PDO, and that it's not you can't transfer density and you can't do things through that. You can just so it really provide procedure which permits more flexible site design and development, period. And then the applicability is taking it out of the residential districts.
So when you talk about it as being primary in the CA and the transitional, I think is it like 51% or more? What does primary mean?
Well, they use CAT.
Yes, yes. Meaning if it's a residential project, primarily residential, yeah.
So if it was mixed use, like if it was commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, the primary use more than, it would have to be the more
So just a
residential.
percentage point of that. Thanks.
Are you going to count parking as commercial?
Sorry?
Are you going to count parking as commercial?
Parking is not counted as commercial. Unless it's a standalone parking
Yeah.
garage. If it's a standalone
There's a lot
parking
of
garage,
inside
then that's different, right?
There's been a lot of it.
It's a commercial
That we paid
parking
attention.
structure.
No example.
Well, if it's part of I'm talking about the Grove, so that's an apartment project that was deemed to be 50-50 residential commercial just because they had a parking garage that the residents could park in?
Well, that's off
I don't know
this
the-
topic,
yeah,
but
that
there's a
wasn't a
whole
PDO.
reason of how
But what
that
I'm-
was determined.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is there a loophole around that?
I'm sorry?
Is there a loophole? You said if it's primarily residential, PDO doesn't.
Isn't allowed.
Yeah, isn't allowed. Is there a loophole around that, like saying, oh, we have a parking garage, therefore it's commercial and we're now not.
No, let me answer that. No, that was a unique thing in the B2 zoning district.
But there are other things you can do
So
potentially.
I would offer too, like, it depends on what it is. So if it's a parking structure downtown and it's intended to serve Main Street, let's just say, that's a commercial parking structure.
I would agree with that.
So in that case, potentially, you could, if it's in CA, maybe you could go through PDO. I don't know what you'd want one for, but maybe you would.
Right. My point only is that we should try to limit the amount of loopholes that are available to people.
That's exactly
to game
why
the
we're
system.
coming and bringing this forward.
This is coming forward later. We will deal with the parking code, which has its own issues. But this is just one, as I describe it, as a whole series of cars and a train.
And so to the parking point, we do want to, one of the recommendations up here on the screen right now is talking about, in the PDO right now, you can request a reduction in the parking requirements. And you can't even, that's the only place in our code that you can currently request that, so.
Well,
Not even in a planned unit development
yeah.
can you reduce the parking, so.
just to be clear, I'm not talking about parking, I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, but I'm just saying, we're moving on.
Okay.
And we're talking about parking.
You're just segueing right
Yep.
into parking. Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yep, clear. Got it. So again, no increase in density or floor area ratio is permitted, so this is just showing you that proposal.
Jocelyn, just going back to you said no changes in parking. Where was that in the PDO where they allowed you to change?
If you look on the page, well, I guess there's no pages. It's
It's
section.
on 1095E. Right, 1095E lets you.
It's stricken.
Okay, so that's where that comes in.
Yeah. So basically, by taking that out, it means you cannot ask for a reduction in parking anymore through PDO would be the outcome. We just did that about the use. So other clarifications we want to add to make it clear that PDO must be compatible with any adopted design standards and guidelines. And if it's in a historic district, review of PDO must be coordinated with historic preservation.
Are you talking about the downtown guidelines and standards specifically there?
That would be an example, yes.
And Robin, that's in 1098 B1. Bingo.
Then the other thing that we really worked hard on is currently in the zoning code, we, in the PDO section, we list out maximum densities for all of our zone districts and as well as maximum floor area ratios. So we want to remove that out of the PDO section and put that respectively within each of the zone districts themselves because it is calling out how the maximum density for those areas. So.
And that was the only place density was provided. So our normal such and such dwelling units per acre was only found ever in the PDO section.
Right.
So if people wanted to know what their density was, we always went to this chapter.
So it's cleaning it up and putting that information where it's supposed to be in each district. So then quickly.
Can I ask some questions just on the 10-9-5, which kind of the section we're in?
Yeah.
I was wondering, is there any, under D, where it says open space, it talks about the minimum open space? Will there be any definition on that in the sense of, you know, we have different definitions of open space in different areas, unobstructed or open space, that says different things. Is there any possibility of defining exactly what that means here, or?
Well, we have a definition of unobstructed
If you
open
look in
space, so
different
that's.
places, it says different things about what open space means. You know, we've talked about that before.
So in this, each zone district, it says minimum unobstructed open space. So that's what, this is just a general reference in the PDO section, but the minimum unobstructed open space is required in each one of the zone districts. So you'll see that when we get to the next.
But maybe that's what we're saying, is you're saying maybe clarify that.
Yes, because and there's a place in the code where it says unobstructed open space under landscaping, and suddenly you're allowed all kinds of things in the landscaping one, versus another place where it says unobstructed open space where you're not allowed any of that. And so that's what I was curious if there would be any clarification.
So that's also on our list to fix, but, so right now we can maybe clarify it here,
Yeah,
but we
we'll
can't
look into
fix it.
it. We'll look into it.
I appreciate that.
Just
It's
make
a lot
this
of work
clear,
you guys
is
are
what I'm
doing.
saying.
How, forgive me for jumping around, but in 10.951A, compatible with existing and permitted uses of adjacent properties, and then B, not access and increased traffic in adjacent residential neighborhood generated shall not have significant detrimental impact. So compatible and not detrimental to the two neighborhoods. Is this enough enforceability of those two to maintain that as a standard within the PDO's creation?
So unless, generally, would you say from a legal standpoint that it's
Yes. I mean, this is just as I said, one piece. What we're trying to do here is make the PDO function a bit more like an overlay. But a number of side issues have been raised here: parking, landscaping, open. All of those cars and the train eventually are going to come up to you. It's just we have sort of a stack of these, and we're doing them in a logical order for us to implement as a staff. And that's why you're seeing this one, because we're seeing too many people using this as a way of avoiding traditional zoning districts. So this is really a case of we need to close this door, and that's why you're seeing this come to you.
I appreciate also what you're saying. I think the comments that are coming out are because these are issues we see when someone comes forward with a PDO. The idea of perhaps being able to have some clarification, or, I mean, Andrew's comment is the same comment I actually was going to bring up. Over there, you also have reinforce and complement citywide and neighborhood design goals, and it's kind of a sticking point. Reinforce. What about comply? You know, Andrew was talking about a more powerful word, perhaps, like comply versus just reinforce. It's confusing when you are asked to make a decision on something that says reinforce versus something that says comply. You get different opinions, and when you're trying to follow the citywide and neighborhood design goals, complements, reinforce, are a bit nebulous versus something that's solid like comply. So I think that's one of the things Andrew was bringing up, and it is something that I was going to ask about also. Maybe this isn't the appropriate time to bring this up here, but it is a sticking point when you're trying to make a decision of yes or no on a PDO. It is helpful for us to have more definitive answers to that.
So the comp plan being guiding principles document, it's hard to say, to make something comply with it. Usually the verbiage is consistent with or compatible with, because it's a non-binding document.
Right, but this is an ordinance. This is in our zoning, and we also have it also with the downtown standards and guidelines that you need to comply with later. It says that, so I don't see why that it's any different to say it here in front of the citywide and neighborhood design goals, since we have it for the downtown standards and guidelines when we're doing that for a PDO.
So one point on specifically on the downtown standards and guidelines. guidelines. As you know, that document, there's a variety of options within it. There's some standards, there's some guidelines, and we are working on a process right now to make changes so that eventually that document will have a list of standards that must be met. So I think that will help to address what you're saying. And we can look at other options for wording. But I think what Carol's trying to articulate is the citywide plan in and of itself is not, it's not it's a guiding document. It's not a regulatory document. So I think that's what she's trying to articulate to that point. But maybe there's a way we can look at what is the wording relative to this to see if there's at least a consistent. So I get it, whatever the action item is in this, what does it say? It's right ahead here. Maybe it's not, maybe it's compatible with, to be consistent versus, sorry, I just lost the word.
Right here.
It says compatible.
It says compatible. No. It says compatible. It says reinforce and complement in other places. There's different words trying to come forward with that, but, the downtown is just one small portion. You've got all the neighborhoods, and they can...
Those truly are guiding principles documents. There's not, if you read those, truly read them, they're aspirational principles, they're policies, they're not. So to say it has to meet that and comply with an aspirational principle is too vague and nebulous to require that of someone.
I do understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is downtown standards and guidelines are not advisory. So hence, that's why they're different. That's why in here you can say you have to follow them, as they are not advisory. They need to be complied with.
Yes, and what I'm saying on that particular project, right, we're working through right now, turning all of it, because remember, it's standards and then there's guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So working on the project right now is to try to turn those guidelines into standards. So eventually that will be coming forward for Planning Commission to see work, and you have 2 representatives on that for that particular document. But I hear what you're saying. Let us look to see if there's at least the same terminology that we can contemplate for this. So, great. Thank you.
Our intent here is to discourage the use of a PDO.
No, our intent is to make a PDO function like an overlay is supposed to be, not as a way to circumvent the underlying zoning. Not to discourage it. We don't want to discourage anybody from doing it. Everybody's entitled to due process, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Right. What we're trying to do is make it function more like a true overlay.
So I'm looking at some of the parcels that are, I gather, still flagged for development, which is why they were included in here.
Those are ones that are currently, so we haven't gotten to that.
So there's a PDO over here in my neighborhood of an agricultural land, the Denver Water Board property.
There's not a PDO. No.
So
that's what you just told me.
No.
If you let us continue. So this map right here shows you all of the properties zoned A1.
There's no PDO.
So there's no PDO. It's just showing you that Denver Water property currently is zoned A1. That's what this is, just to show you, to give you that context. The next map, so then what we're saying in A1, it currently doesn't list a maximum for density, so we're moving it from the PDO into the A1 district. So we're clarifying that. So here it is then showing you that, and then we're also clarifying minimum lot size and trying to create consistency how we call all these things out in each of the respective zone districts. So
frankly, this makes the code more usable, because as a typical applicant, I would come in and I'd be looking for the conditions in the zoning district, and the 2 most important conditions aren't there.
Yeah. And currently there are no PDOs in the A1 zone district.
The PDO map was back on this one.
Right.
I guess what I want to just reinforce, and maybe I'm off on this, but I want to reinforce, and specific to that parcel there, the challenge of that parcel for the past 35 years has been, it's the, Rudnicki's comment is it should be a park. It's the last parcel standing in a fully developed area, right? And there is what we call the Gang of 14, which is the 14 houses that live around this parcel that would be adamant, as if we were writing some rules on how this was going to go, that they had a compatible, what I interpret to mean, that's R1, this is R1, that's compatible, we're good. some sort of force in that language to allow that I can trust the zoning will be something darn similar to what I have.
Well, unless they rezone this thing, A1 is what they have right now. So the uses allowed are whatever they are within the A1 zone district.
So they're not, so if they wanted to rezone it, that's a totally different process. They would have to meet all the requirements for rezoning, which is covered in chapter 12, it's the map and stuff. So they need to meet all that criteria, and that has, you know, a minimum lot size of 180,000 square feet. So there's all kinds of criteria for that one to rezone the property.
Using a PDO.
No.
This is straight up rezoning.
Straight up rezoning.
Right. Either to a different zone district, or they can do the PD, assuming they have
A PUD. A planned unit development, PD, is different than a P, see, that's where also the disconnect is also.
Yeah, 'cause they're
This
using
is
the
not
same-
zoning. This is just an overlay. So
Yep.
think of this as a variance. This is like a variance, kind of, in a way. It's not zoning, like a PD or a rezoning. It's supposed to be an additive effect. Like, okay, like, I'll give you the example that we used at City Council. In Arapahoe County, they had an overlay district that was over by the joint planning area between the airport, the City of Centennial, and Arapahoe County. They had additional design standards on that, so that anything that Centennial wanted to annex was subject to additional criteria in addition to the underlying zone district that was in the county.
It's sort of like the downtown standards and guidelines. They're just not in a formal overlay, it's in a document, right? But whatever the zoning is, CA, that's one thing, and then the next level is you have to meet the design standards. So sometimes those design elements are actually in an overlay.
Gotcha.
So
So
it's
to
like the
change the
opposite of
zone-
the variance. Like the opposite of the variance. Instead of being less restrictive like a variance would allow, it's more restrictive.
That's what a true overlay
Overlay
should
is,
be.
yeah.
Right now, this doesn't function. What we're proposing to do
Gets it
is
closer.
to make it more like a true overlay.
Go to the next slide, I've got a question.
Okay, so anyway, that's the change for that one.
Shuts off. Minimum lot width, you struck out at front setback, and they just say 300 feet. So, you know, if you have a pie-shaped piece of property, how's it measured?
So it's typically where the street frontage is. What's weird is when our code is at the front setback. Let's say you have a 50-foot setback. What we have people doing is they want to create a whole bunch of really skinny lots that then bulb out into this big thing so that they can cram more in there. And as long as that it's in that front yard setback, they can do that. So we're trying to make it function like regular codes where it's at the front lot line.
Well, you don't say, okay, minimum lot width, just dangling, it says 300 feet.
Right, because that's the way industry practice standard is, it's always at the front lot line. So you don't need to say it again, it's just
where
lot width.
Where do you say it one time so we know?
Never, you don't need to say it. Any zoning code is always at the front lot line, unless otherwise specified at the front setback, which is what they had done in this one. We're trying to get this.
And then make it more clear and straightforward.
Okay.
I agree with Mark.
No,
That makes it, if we're talking about a citizen who doesn't know, zoning vernacular or zoning code, when they see lot width 300 feet, they don't see at the front lot line, they just see lot width 300 feet.
I believe it's
in no disrespect, we're trying to make it workable, but you bet, we probably have a lot of people that call and better understand anything, whether it's what is a PDO, down to how to interpret some of these. So we do have some of that, without a doubt. People are coming, asking us a variety of what does the code mean.
Is there something in the definitions?
There's stuff in the definitions for lot line front.
As long as it's there, fine. It's there somewhere, then no
There
problem.
isn't always, but there is for that.
Appreciate looking at for amateurs like Mark.
Again, here, just for background, this one's harder to see. There isn't much of it, but just so you guys know, the number of parcels we have in RS, again, just for the context.
I just thought this was helpful.
10.3 acres in 4 parcels. And again, it's It's moving the maximum density from the PDO into the RS district. So that's what that's saying there. Here's where it is, again, cleaning up the verbiage around lot sizes and width.
And there was no change to the density in these, it's just it got there in a roundabout way through the minimum lot size.
In some cases.
In some cases, and we'll point out the ones where it was different, but in these residential zone districts, there was it wasn't a change.
None of this. RL, again, 82 parcels, which again, for background, acreage there. Same thing, we're clarifying the density is 2 acres, over 0.5 dwelling units an acre. Moving it from BDO into the RL, cleaning up lot size, lot width. Here's RE, 131 acres. And again, same thing, density. There it is showing you it's strikeable. R1, same thing, moving the density. Strikeable. R2, 4,000 parcels here. Again, same thing. RS, R2, R3, 607 parcels. Moving the density.
This is all, these are all the same, right?
Yeah, we're just
Taking
just showing you, completely just showing you everything we did.
Making it two words. Same concept.
Yeah.
So again, the density.
Details.
There.
Right.
Lot size, R4, same thing.
I do have a question on that slide, down at the bottom, maximum height of structure 30 feet. Underneath it says wall 20 feet, structures 2-story. What does wall mean?
That's existing in the code. Let's see. What was that? I can't see that.
I can do a Trump wall or something on the property.
That's a good point. I think we should just strike both of those and just say 30 feet.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I would say we should strike both of those and just say the maximum height is 30 feet.
Well, unless, just in the case of trying to figure it out, were they intending that there'd always be a pitched roof house in an R4 district?
Well, that's the maximum though, so you could have a 20-foot wall on a flat roof.
Right.
Yeah. 2 stories.
Under the maximum.
I don't even know what the
Right.
wall means.
I don't even know what that means.
Now, why does anyone care?
Well, if we don't know what it means, let's clarify it.
It was made more sense to strike it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question. Do that. R5, 113 acres. Again, moving that density.
And this one had the height, though. You were allowed to increase the height in R5.
Right.
So it's in
6 again.
6, maximum height of the structure 30 feet.
Oops.
You're able to go up an additional foot in height shall be allowed for a following increase in setbacks. So it was a 1-to-1 setback. Additional one, you have 20-foot setback in R5. So if you set it back 21 feet, you can go up 30, your building height can be 31 feet.
So this is the first item that you're actually taking away a current right.
This is the one where we're, yes, taking this out of the code, yes.
And, okay, so I have a big question. Why? Why is that leaving? Not that that's bad, but why is it gone?
Well, there was no mechanism to do this either. So it wasn't through the PDO. It was just staff would evaluate a single or a multifamily dwelling unit that could be plopped down next to other houses. And you could go up really tall on a really tiny lot if you set it far enough back. And the impact was very great on the adjacent properties.
I know what the impact is, and
that's why.
Well,
That's why
Denver has that in residential areas, but you can, like on a 62 and 50-foot lot, there's a 30-foot height limit. If you have a 65.5-foot wide lot, for every 5 feet, you can go up 1 foot, but only 2 extra feet. If you have a much larger lot, too bad, but you can go to 32.
Right.
But here, it looks like you can go to the sky.
To the sky.
1 for 1. Yeah, so if you're Mr. Nice Guy and you have a 6, 7-foot, 8-foot setback, you can go much higher.
You could have a giant micro unit that's a tower, and you could go all the way up if you wanted to, if you're set back.
But that's the first, like I say, that's the first item we're actually taking away a right. And that's the intent, fine and dandy. Okay.
it's across the zone district.
I'm sorry.
So it's not any one
It's not any one individual lot, it's across the district.
What zone is the high-rise building over by Home Depot? Home Depot, the nursing home.
I believe that's a PD.
I think it's a PD.
Yeah, planned unit development zoning. So that would have come through with a whole, like you've seen, like let's think of the recent Stone Creek, you know, how they had some illustrative architecture and stuff on that. That would have come through that way.
So here's, so the other, this one.
So, and then on R5, they had, so in 95, was it not, I'm sorry, 2015, they amended added the townhome option. So the townhomes, though, didn't have a zero lot line condition. So there was, it kept the setbacks, and there was nothing to allow a townhome to sit on one lot, or sit on two different lots with a zero lot line condition. So you still have your setback on either side, so you were never able to achieve a true townhome, because you always had to meet the setbacks. And so if you had a lot line for true property ownership, you had to set back so you could never have an attached product. So even though they tried
Or you had to do it through a PDO was the only option.
And since it's coming out of the PDO, we're adding that zero lot line condition.
When it's an attached.
Is there can somebody buy a lot next to a zero lot line and just plop a structure right next to? They have to be the same owner?
No, it would only be the.
It's only for townhomes. It's only for a townhome. That's why it says in the code under townhomes. Interior lot lines with townhomes.
Then in T, 6.5 acres. There, it didn't list a maximum density or floor area ratio, so we're moving both of those from the PDO into the T district.
And in T it
and then
required.
and then the other thing cleaning up was the lot size.
I was curious, it says here about for the FAR to be 1-to-1. And here it looked like 5-to-1.
Oh, that's a typo.
Which one in?
It was under transitional.
That type, I did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So B under, it says maximum floor area ratio 5-to-1.
I think that's it. Oh, no, it's 1-to-1.
It's 1-to-1.
It's a typo in
In the code
the
itself.
text.
In the text.
It's 1-to-1. The idea was not to change anything from, so it was just a mistake. In the PDO section, what it is right now, T is a floor area of 1-to-1. So it's just transferring that from the PDO section into the zone district. So it's a typo in the text.
Yeah, that's how I figured it was.
Yep.
So are there no height restrictions in T and other ones moving forward?
There's, T has height maximum 30 feet.
I got you, it's further down.
And it did have the same thing that we just talked about. It had the ability to, for each additional foot, or, you know what I mean, setback came back a foot, you could go up another foot in height. So we're recommending removing that.
And also in T, in order to do, within the T zone district, a PDO as provided for in Chapter 9 must be approved if you're doing an addition to the new principal structure or the construction of an addition, which costs more than 50% of the appraised value. So it requires you to do a PDO, and then we're getting into the cost of stuff with people and then regulating that, and it's not, just take it out of here. It's who's going to say if it's 50% more or if it's 49.99% more, then it's not required to do a PDO. And we're pushing people into a PDO is just, unnecessary. So we're recommending removing that as well.
CA, 51 acres. This also didn't have the maximum floor area ratio, so we're putting that in there. The other thing that in CA did allow through a PDO to get an increase in density, which that should only be allowed through PUD or plan development. So we are recommending we take that out. In the PDO, I think it's at 100 units per acre, and when you did the math in CA, it came down to 75. So that's what we're recommending we put that, we spell that maximum out more clearly and more plainly so people understand that.
Because you could go up to another 25 dwelling units per acre if you did a PDO and CA.
And that should be the 5 to 1.
Well, floor area ratio is different than the residential.
Right, no, I'm
That
just
one, yeah,
asking,
that
that
one,
one,
yeah.
just double, it's just the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, so the numbers on that one.
Is it the same number? Just double checking.
Yep. Yes, that is 5 to 1. The existing.
The height limit you.
Sorry, I was copying and pasting and copied that CA into the T. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's correct. Okay, right?
Except
Oh, I mean, in the T, that's where the 5 was my.
Definition of rough draft.
The other one in CA is about the minimum, the square footage. Why am I not finding CA?
Because it's before T.
No,
It's right here.
yeah, so we're just listing, cleaning it up, the single family, and then we have a multifamily density for some reason. Again, the goal wasn't necessarily to change that, that's what the code says today. So I just want to explain that to you guys if you wonder why there's a single family dwelling unit and a multifamily maximum.
And the 575 square feet is the 75.5 So that's how you get there backwards.
That's why we're taking
the density,
that piece
so
out.
we're clarifying it. 75.75 dwelling units per acre is minimum, multiple family minimum lot size of 575 square feet. Some fun math.
Yes.
The height in the CA, you struck out, it says 40 feet, and you struck out or 3 stories.
Yes.
What was the deal there?
Because 3 stories, you could potentially have 50 feet, 3-story building, right?
Sure.
It says or 3 stories, so we're trying to be consistent because the majority of all the other codes give you a height maximum.
Just give
So
the height and
40 is it.
if you could put 5 stories and 40 feet, help yourself.
But then you can't go higher.
Because we've had people wanting to do, higher, but they're like, it's only, we're just
Oh,
getting
3
taller
stories, but
series.
they're 20 feet
We're
each.
having high ceilings, and so, okay, then we're like at 43.
I assume they always lost that argument, but it gives you a potential loophole. Okay.
So again, just trying to clean it up so it makes it clearer for people. That's the idea.
So then we
And then the
split-
other pieces in CA, there were some specifics around when you could use a PDO. So we were cleaning that up. It was very confusing and really hard for staff to understand that. And so that's what this is showing you here.
Yeah, so that's D, the new D, old C, that it said that it seemed to lead you to believe that the following criteria had to be met in order to be eligible for a PDO, but it was vague and nebulous and weird, so we cleaned it up.
That BP, you can sort of see it on there.
And teeny, and the Ted Richardson, no, that was IP, sorry. That's a
3 parcels.
2.5 acres.
So just some minor edits here. B1, 68 acres.
Have those people been consulted? That I suppose everybody in the city needs to be consulted that we're not changing anything per se, but we're going through a process. To those units that are specifically that zoning applies to that guy, have we gone to them and been that direct?
So the mechanism for doing that is the Littleton plans and the public, putting it out for the public to comment on. Sending a letter to every single person in the city that zoned something, and then people that are even outside, you can't do that. So we just put it out on we're going to, after our study sessions with you, get it out on Littleton plans, and then developers that have been coming in for pre-application meetings, properties, we have an interested citizens list that they register with the city, and we can send them notifications out.
Right, to try to get more of the organizations. We have an interested parties list, so, yeah.
We should pay attention.
This one, funny enough, B1, just to point it out, it actually did have a maximum floor area ratio already listed in it, so we don't have to do anything there. Which was the same as in the PDO, fortunately.
No maximum height on,
Correct.
Yep.
No maximum height on B1, B2.
Yep.
It's all done through the floor area ratio, that
B2
math, that
also
bulk
had
and
the
scale.
floor area ratio.
Yeah, your break will be the floor area ratio and the parking requirement.
And open space, that's part of it.
If you want to be really stupid, yeah, you could do 50 stories of a building that's, 10 feet by 10 feet.
need one of those.
Micro units again.
B3, again, just cleaning up some, trying to be consistent with lot area and space. IP, again, this one did not have a maximum floor area, so we're putting it into zone district from the PDO. So that's showing it for you in this slide. I1. That one did. So I2, and same thing. So we already got to that point, but the next steps would be community outreach through the venues we were just mentioning. And it comes back to you guys formally to look at in May.
Good job.
It's going to make staff life a little bit easier, which kind of bothers me, but.
Why do you want to torture us? Your process is more arduous.
They just won one for you. What do you
Now, it does make it cleaner and clearer, we think, trying to be consistent through each of the districts. So it will help people. So maybe, you know what I mean? It gives a little more clarity and transparency across the board on what you can and can't do.
Yeah, it baffles me why all that stuff was in the PDO.
And nowhere else, yeah.
When you didn't have a PDO, you still had to go to that language and then come back.
So when I first started, I'm like, where's the density? Everybody's
Oh,
like, we
right,
gotta go
me
to,
too.
yeah,
Right.
and they're
We're like,
like, go to the PDO section. I'm like, why would the density be in there? They're like, that's the only place it is. I'm like, well, no, if you do reverse math, you can get the density. And it was just so
It's very
complicated.
confusing. So this should help on that level. So. Okay, great. Well, if you think of something else in the middle of the night, just email us, and the next step, we'll take your comments and we'll get a draft out to the community. So. Yeah, great. Thank you.
We'll get another draft. We'll see the next draft, and then there'll be a final.
We'll see. It, depending on how much it changes, you may not need to see it in a study session again. We may be able to just bring it to you in a hearing. But we'll make that as we, depending on how many comments we get. Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a full meeting.
Well, I can say that you're going to be seeing a lot of code amendments this year.
Thank you.
Yes, you have.
Appreciate the effort.
Is this for us to keep, by the way?